Why is it so important to treat all of the people you serve with dignity?
It's important because it's so encouraging to a person.
When I tell people what Matthew's Hope is, the hallmark of it, if you will, it's dignity.
We're not going to serve a meal that I wouldn't want to eat. We're not going to build a house that I wouldn't want to live in. We're not going to open a clinic that I wouldn't want to go to.
I do truly believe that we can build shelters that would be welcoming to communities simply based by how you made them look and how you operated them.
The traditional shelter offers warehousing capabilities, and we're not warehousing people. We shouldn't be warehousing people.
It's not cheap, but when you compare the money that's being spent in law enforcement and incarcerating people, it actually is a bargain.
When you are only accepting people that are sane and sober and have their act together, then what does that do? It pushes the folks that are most struggling out the door. When a person's at the weakest moment in their life, the most powerful thing we can do is treat them like they're the most important person in the room. And that one act alone becomes transformational.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Lewis from Imagine Marketing. I'm joined by Pastor Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Matthew's Hope, as well as Tim McKinney, who is the CEO of United Global Outreach.
Great to be back.
Thank you for being here. Tim, you recently joined us for episode 71, where we talked about your work in Transformation Village down the road in Bithlo, Florida. And I encourage everyone who's listening and watching to go back and watch that full episode if you haven't seen it already. But there is a lot more left to say, so we invited you back, Tim. Thank you for being here. And this week we are going to continue our discussion and dive deeper into the ingredients that are necessary for real transformation, whether that is through Transformation Village or through the work that Matthew's Hope does. So welcome to episode 78 of Straight Talk, No BS with Matthew's Hope, presented by Imagine Marketing. Imagine Marketing is a full-service marketing firm based in Winter Garden, Florida. At Imagine Marketing, we put in the extra effort to craft a tailored strategy for success. Our comprehensive marketing solutions will help drive a unified message across all mediums. We also offer photography, videography, and even podcast production services. So book your free consultation today.
A little consolation.
I almost got through it, huh?
Hey, you did pretty good.
Welcome back, Tim. Welcome back, Tim. Before we get to this week's episode, what kind of feedback have you received from the people that saw your appearance in episode 71?
It's been tremendous. I had no idea, Scott, that you had such a broad audience because people have been reaching out to me. Some of them, actually, a guy called me today who just happened to catch it on my Instagram and said, I've been following Matthew's Hope as long as I've been following United Global Outreach. And so he's over here in Cocoa working today. And I said, hey, here I'll be. And so I'm excited to be a part of it and to get such recognition for a community that for too long has been ignored and overlooked. And so thanks for making the connection for us.
That's
thanks.
Great.
Well, it's I'll just say from our end, it's been cool for us to be able to shine a spotlight on other things that are going on and build the audience the way it is, because I get some very interesting. Now I've had some people like, why would you have Tim McKinney on? It's for Matthew's Hope. And I go, we're trying to get people to understand there's a lot more warriors out there than you think, not nearly enough. But I said, I'm focusing on those folks that I know, those guys that I know that stay in the trenches. And you've been in the trenches for a long time.
You sure it wasn't a few people that were saying, why do you have that jerk on? Because he's a big pain in our neck, like some elected officials.
Well, usually they already think I'm a jerk too, so they're not talking to me.
So now we got two jerks. All right.
Yeah. Listen, my fan base is kind of incredible.
Right. Haters make us famous.
Oh, yeah. Well.
So, Tim, the last time you were here, you listed a number of ingredients that you see as necessary to truly create a transformation. Can you remind us what those are?
Sure. So in our world, as we're working to develop a model to actually solve poverty in tough communities, we focus on 10 areas simultaneously that need to be working in every community for it to be a healthy place to live. Ready? Education, transportation, housing, healthcare, the environment, basic needs, which include social services, economic opportunity, the arts and athletics, building a sense of community, which is so important. And then we've added recently restoring safety and security. And the basis for our work is not programs. I mean, you need a GED class and take a GED test to get your GED, but we really need relationships. And so we believe that relationships equal transformation. And then guiding principles that we have that really undergird all that we do is we don't want to do something for someone else that we wouldn't want done for ourselves or our family. So we're not going to serve a meal that I wouldn't want to eat. We're not going to build a house that I wouldn't want to live in. We're not going to open a clinic that I wouldn't want to go to. And so that's really the guiding principles for our work.
I love that. And Scott, the guests you serve are specifically homeless individuals, and your model is not the same as Transformation Village, but you still have certain basic ingredients that are woven throughout your program as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, look, Tim is much a bigger thinker than I am. Okay. Yeah. I killed off most of my brain cells years ago and have been kind of struggling to just nurse this one for the last at least 40 years. But the truth is when I tell people what Matthew's Hope is and that the short version of it is, and then it just explodes from there. But, Matthew's Hope is a ministry first and foremost. And the key word here is demonstrating the love, hope, grace, and mercy of Jesus Christ in all we do. And we're facilitator of opportunity for those. I used to say choose. Now I say desire to move forward towards a life of independence and self-sustainability. But in that, a lot happens because we look for accountability. We look for a solid, the hallmark of it, if you will, it's dignity. Tim mentions, why am I going to serve you a meal that I wouldn't eat myself? And the truth is, we've both been around for a while, and there's some things out there that I go, I guess it's better than nothing, but that's not exactly
That's
it.
not okay.
That's not okay with me. It's like kind of like when people say, my dad just recently passed. He's got a ton inch in underwear and it's pretty good shape, and it's washed. And I'll say, well, if I took my underwear right off now and I washed it and gave it to you, would you wear it? And they go, well, no. I said,
Right.
Why would I give that to someone just because they're homeless? So it's a lot about where we really match it. It's about dignity. It's about creating opportunity, facilitating connections with different things. There's things that we do directly ourselves. There's things that we partner with others to do. So we're both constantly looking into partners. And recently we've even shared some ideas on partners. And I think the more you get guys like us and organizations like those that we head up, talking to each other, knowledge is power. Okay. Even for some uneducated idiot like me, if I know who to call, I know who to talk to. And sometimes I'm sure you've done this too, Tim, where you just picked up the phone and said, hey, I don't know where to go with this. Do you know anybody who does? And they go, oh yeah, hold on for a minute. And you start building those relationships where people trust you. And a lot of times they'll say, hey, let me do this. I'm going to call them right now and say, hey, I'm going to have Scott call you. Here's who he is. Would you give him a few minutes? Yeah. Okay. And that's the relationship aspect.
And that's how closely connected we are. And we don't know it. I mean, we see it now on social media because we're like, oh, you have friends in common.
Yeah.
No, you knew them.
What's more of those enemies we talked about in common?
There you go. Well, we can block them.
Yeah.
But also selfishly, I love VIP treatment. In another world, I, had a lot of things and a chauffeur and a limo, and I like getting great service at great restaurants. And so I feel like when people are at their most vulnerable point in life, shouldn't we treat them like a VIP? And so selfishly, I like to be treated that way. And so we want to roll out that same treatment when we're dealing with others.
That's great.
Yeah, I think the biggest compliment I've heard it from folks that have been involved with you, and I know we hear it all the time, is a couple of key things that kind of really keep me in the game. You heard me. You saw me. Those are two big ones. But also when people say, oh my gosh, the way we've been treated, that means more than everything. Because there's some organizations out there that have much more resources than we'll ever have. They have access to resources that I'll never see. But the difference is I think we get further when you treat people like individuals. You treat them with dignity. And again, like Tim said, you treat them the way you want to be treated.
Well, and what you mentioned unlocks the greatest force around, and that's love. So when you really love someone, it becomes transformational.
That alone will get us a nasty gram. In both our I make John nuts when I say the nasty gram. That's what I call him. There will be someone that will take issue that we agreed on, that love can really solve a lot of these issues. Yeah. Okay. I can just hear it now. But, bring it on, I
mean, Dr. King said it's the only thing that can.
Yeah.
Well, he was a black guy.
So, Tim.
That'll get somebody fired up. Okay.
You'll get another
'cause
nasty
but
rest of that one.
here's the thing. That's the absurdity of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know there's somebody out there thinking that, and I'm going, I'm just the one that will sit there and put it in somebody's face. But I
Right.
know there's someone out there thinking that, well, they're black or they're homeless or they're this or they're Republican or they're a Democrat it's like, just stop it. I told the other day, I said, if next time I get invited, and I did do it recently, I said, here's my sermon. Here's my sermon. Love God, love his people, shut up. If you just do that, I spoke last night at a church. That's what I told them. You do that, the rest of it will take care of itself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that will get somebody fired up, but that's okay.
Fire up creates conversation.
It does.
So, Tim, talk about the idea of transformation in general compared to simply providing services.
Yeah, I think it, again, just goes to the foundation of what I'm talking about. I mean, in fact, today, we had someone that's been treating our staff horribly, overdose, and literally die. And they were brought back with naloxone. And when they woke up, they were treating them even worse.
Yeah.
But guess what we were doing? We were loving them anyway. And so we know over time that principle, that whether it be a black guy like Dr. King who would go across a bridge and take a brick in the head and still love the people throwing the brick, or the biblical example of how many times should I allow this guy to punch me in the face?
Yeah.
70 times 7. You know what I mean? That's the underlying principle that I think brings about transformation. So in a normal organization, in a normal work, if you're bad, you're out.
Yeah.
We can't afford to put people out, because where will they go? They'll go somewhere else to still have a problem and become someone else's problem. So we're working every day to figure out how to keep you in.
Make that transformation happen. You also both talk about doing all things with excellence and the fact that people don't want to see shelters like they think of in big cities or what is often portrayed in media.
And I think it's, it's a fair and unfair statement when you look at this kind of stuff. But here's the thing. And I know Tim has tested this as well. I feel like we're having a little love fest here. But all kidding aside, it's, what do we want to be in? Well, what environment do we want to be in every day? What do we want our neighborhood to look like? I know that when we landed here in Brevard, and I went through it in Orange County 15 years ago, there were people that went out of their way to get petitions written, trying to stop what I was doing here. Okay. But wouldn't walk over here to see what's going on. The ones that have come here go, my God, how is it so clean? I don't see homeless people laying around out front. Because we don't allow it. We don't want that. And that's not a dignified thing to even let people do. Yeah. So occasionally, somebody will wander up front there and squat down in the grass or whatever, kind of lay down. And the truth is, rather than yelling at them, okay, we go out there and we say, hey, guys, we got to keep the neighbors happy and to be able to do what we do. Oh, and almost even some of the turd buckets will sit there and go, oh, I understand. And they'll go. So again, sometimes it's the approach. Now, as Tim will tell you, there's some guys like the guy, he's trying to save this guy's life and he still comes up, swinging and being ugly. Here's the thing. You got to stop and go, what made it acceptable for that person to be that way? It's kind of like when someone says, well, that person doesn't take care of themselves, they don't do this. Well, part of it is access to get stuff. But the other side of it is when you just give up, and that's what's happened with folks. They've given up because they've been so treated poorly by the general population that doesn't know their backstory. Why are they there? We've talked this in previous episodes that I will tell you 99% of the people we've served over the last 15 years and 20 doing what I do, trauma. There's been a trauma there.
Yeah.
And some of that trauma is stuff that maybe you and I have been through, but for whatever reason, God built us each differently. And how I responded to it and reacted to it was different than maybe you would.
Or we had more support.
You had the support system is huge. Yeah. When you go through a major loss and there's no support and you're inside your head, that creates so much anguish in people. But when, I literally watched, this has been a few months ago, but I watched some they probably were 16 to 18 years old. And it was right out here. We're at our Cocoa location right now, and out on 520, and a man was sitting there, and this is before the benches were pulled out. And they walked by, and just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just hit this guy upside the head, and then just walked off. And the guy's laying there, and they didn't know who he was. It was just a helpless older gentleman that looked, I couldn't say for sure, but looked to be homeless. And that's a sad state.
He looked to not be an important person.
Yeah.
Which is not okay.
He didn't meet the standard of worthy.
Yeah. I think to the point of your statement, though, what we see on TV, the tents, whether it be in LA, lining the streets, the needles, the drugs, the feces, all of this stuff happening. Nobody wants that in their backyard. And so the perception is, even going to downtown Orlando, unfortunately, and I'm on the board of the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness, so this is very important to me. I'm a downtown resident. But I think organizations like the Coalition and others that are providing shelter services have to do a much better job with what's happening outside the wall. Mm-hmm. I mean, I literally dropped someone off not too long ago, and there was still brain matter on the sidewalk from a stabbing or shooting that happened the night before. You'll never see that at Transformation Village. Mm-hmm. Do crazy things happen from time to time? Absolutely. But if something is happening in the street or across the street or on the sidewalk, we're out there addressing it, as Scott mentioned, because that's not okay. And then again, to bring people inside instead of requiring them to be laying around outside, that's another thing we don't do well too often, is we discharge everybody in the morning and push them out into the streets. Wow. So we welcome you to come in and stay inside. And then we add that extra ingredient of, would you like a latte or a chai tea? What? Mm-hmm. Not just black coffee. No, because you're an important person.
We've got a coffee house now.
I know. I love this.
We're getting a coffee house. Got to have a coffee house. We've actually talked about it. So, again, it's the reality is some of this stuff is really small. I mean, it's not brain surgery. It really is treating people with dignity and building relationships. We do correct things. There's times I got to get on somebody, but I always try to make sure too that they know that, look, I'm getting on you because I love you, and out in the real world, that's not going to be acceptable, and someone is going to take you down for it.
Right.
And I'd rather tell you here that it's just a bad idea. And then I'll ask, why do you think you responded that way?
Yeah.
And again, you'll end up saying, well, let me tell you what happened. Last night I was moved 3 times. This happened just the other day. Guy probably at least a foot taller than I am. Big guy. Big, very masculine looking guy. He says, I was moved 3 times last night. And that's all he got out of his mouth. And he started bawling. And he just sat down and he was like rocking almost like a child. And he says, I'm so tired. Because I'm so tired, Scott. I just want to sleep. And they keep moving me. I haven't done anything wrong. I haven't done anything. I haven't been arrested for it, and he's just going through this whole thing. Yeah. And all I could really do is sit there and listen and assure him that he's loved. I can't stop them being moved every night. But I can also say that with this new law on moving these people sometimes several times a night, that the anxiety level is off the charts for some of these folks. And that's going to erupt into a problem.
It's going to turn to violence and it's going to be bad. I mean, again, when you're already unhoused, but what you try to make a home, putting a rug down, putting a tarp over, keeping things dry, and you literally can't unpack because you're constantly being moved. And so in East Orange County, where we work primarily, I say often, if your only option is no option, that's not okay. So why do we need to have shelters? Because there's no other option. But the types of shelters we need to have would be what I would want in my backyard. So in East Orange County, there's a lot of people with acreage. And I'm like, if you have a wooded area, you literally have homeless people living in your literal backyard. So why don't we provide them another option that's in the community that allows them to get off the streets? And wouldn't somebody rather be inside an air-conditioned building during the day, watching TV, reading a book, working on their education than sitting outside on the sidewalk or in the woods?
Right.
Absolutely. And it was interesting. When we traveled to Europe this summer, we were in Holland, and one of the places once Charlene's family understood more what we did, then they wanted to take us everywhere that had to do with homelessness. But we went to a place that had their coffee house. They had a place that people could literally just get out. We don't have the funding and resources to do that right now. But the other thing is, I also don't just really, when we do open as an emergency shelter of some kind, I'm not just plowing everybody out of here at 7:00 in the morning. That's just crazy.
I don't want to be out at 7 in the morning. I'm not a morning person.
Yeah, I'm not either. And yeah, the last couple of days about wiped me out because I got 3 days in a row at 7:30, and it's like, that's just not my style.
Right.
I can do a long day. I just can't start it early. Well, I'm trying not to step in some stuff here, but let's just talk about the shelter
Straight talk,
situation.
please. Straight talk.
Okay, let's go. I know. Well, and I'm in trouble a lot. I'm in trouble a lot. And if you really want to know where I think I'm going to get in trouble, you'll hear my ring do something like that, or you'll see me do the cup. And John will try to stop me from behind the camera because he hears it, right? That's usually what it is, my little tick, my little giveaway. But first off, in Orange County, we have 3 main shelters that are all within walking distance of each other. Okay. People don't realize also that you pay to stay in a shelter. Here's what you also need to know is to get into a shelter at night, to have a bed at night, you got to get in line about 2 p.m. What job do you know of that you can say to somebody, I got to get off, boss, at 1:30 so I can make it down to the shelter. Right. Okay. Yeah. And so now that contributes to the panhandling. Okay. Then you hit maximum and then you have people outside. Again, the visual on this gets people pretty wired up. I truly believe, and I look, I'm not here to take shots at organizations. However, I do truly believe that we could build shelters that would be welcoming to communities simply based by how you made them look and how you operated them in a very dignified way. Yeah. It's not cheap, but when you compare the money that's being spent in law enforcement and incarcerating people, it actually is a bargain.
And by the way, no community, no neighborhood should have 3 shelters in it. That's unfair to that neighborhood also. There's other historic reasons why that community's been exploited, but that's a problem. That's not what we're proposing. I'm proposing that we spread out the shelters so that we have smaller shelters, more strategically located, so that we don't end up with those visuals.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that a traditional shelter offers the opposite of transformation?
I think the traditional shelter offers warehousing capabilities, and we're not warehousing people. We shouldn't be warehousing people. We warehouse things. So we need to be treating people, again, the way that I would want to be treated. So I don't want to sit on a metal chair all day long. I want to sit on a comfy couch.
Well, and you shouldn't fear going someplace and keep your shoes on because you're afraid somebody's going to steal them.
Right.
And again, I will not pretend to know all the dynamics to any of the shelters. And I think it's fair to say that our guests sometimes can give you a pretty good story. However, you do this long enough and you hear the same stories over and over again and you see the same things over again. It's kind of like if it smells like a skunk, walks like a skunk, chances are it's a skunk. And so, but I think there's a lot of the other side of that is I think there's a lot of reasons too for some of that. And some of it is the way things are funded.
A lot of it is.
I've watched, it wasn't that long ago that we saw one shelter in particular that was moving more towards a model similar to ours until everybody had to, if you didn't agree to this part and you didn't support this part of how this grant was written, you weren't getting any money. And so what happens is basically every 3 to 4 years, they shove this new idea down the pike. And if you don't go along with that idea, you're not going to get the money. And the other thing they do is we're competing against each other constantly. When I say we're, not so much us, because we don't depend on, I never say government money anymore. There's no such thing. They don't produce
taxpayer
anything.
funds.
Taxpayer funds. We don't operate on a lot of taxpayer funds. But the other side of it is they're competing it for these dollars. So it's like, I want you to do well. I just want to come out one step ahead of you because I need that money. Okay. So there's a lot of things wrong with the system as a whole.
And I think when you are only accepting people that are sane and sober, and have their act together, then what does that do? It pushes the folks that are most struggling out the door. So we need to create
and the most visual.
Yeah, we need to create more all access shelters, in my opinion, so that we can get people inside, have the opportunity to build relationships, and give them the stability of not having to worry all day long about where I'm going to stay tonight, so that then they can work on accepting services and getting the access to care that they need.
Yeah. Tim, you run a box. What is in that box?
Yeah, so I brought with me Clixado, which is a name brand. Like Kleenex is actually tissues, but it's become synonymous. Narcan has become synonymous with the drug naloxone. Clixado is another name brand, and it happens to have twice the strength of Narcan per dose. And so, as I mentioned, one of our peer support folks had to literally bring a person back to life this morning, one of our homeless friends that had overdosed when she came to work and showed up at the coffee shop. He was sitting in the chair, blue as blue sky. And it took 3 doses of Clixado to bring him back to life. So It's a miracle working drug. We want everyone to have it. A lot of times people will say, I don't know any drug addicts. You may pull into the parking lot of the grocery store and someone's in the car. It's such a problem in our country, a poisoning of our country, an attack on our population, that if we don't have it with us in that moment, you can't use it. I was at a meeting of folks that seemed to care about this distribution the other day, and about 25 in the room. And I said, raise your hand if you have it on you right now. Only about 7 did.
Oh, wow.
Well, it's not going to help you if it's in your car and you're not by your car. Sure. So we've got to keep this on us at all times, because we never know when we can bring someone back to life, so that we can then get them the time, buy them the time to get the access to care that's going to allow them to really live.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the sad news about that. There will be somebody that sees that and is going to say, well, we're just prolonging the inevitable, or, well, you know what? They did it to themselves. Let's take one more step back. It's not just we have 2 things going on right now in our society. You have drug overdoses. Those are people that took too much of a drug, or let's say they pulled back on it, tried to go right back to that dose they used to do, and it killed them. Okay, overdose. Then we have the poisoning. Okay, fentanyl is being put into,
everything.
As a former drug dealer, I don't understand killing your clientele.
Yeah.
Okay, it just doesn't make sense to me from that standpoint. But here's what's happening. We're seeing kids that try something one time, and that's what killed them.
Yeah, I saw a DEA presentation, 3 out of every 5 pills, because the same pill presses are being sold to the drug cartels by the Chinese, that the Chinese sell to the pharmaceutical companies. So you physically can't tell the difference in the pill and the way it looks. And 3 out of 5 of them have a lethal dose of fentanyl in it. Somebody also said to me the other day, making this available, doesn't that mean that drug users are going to just use more drugs because they know they can go back? And I said, you don't know how you feel when you use this. You are not a happy person. Yeah. You feel terrible. You are not going to intentionally use a drug only to have your friend bring you back because everybody's having a good time. You're using a drug that if you don't use it every day, you feel like you're dying, or the overdose or the withdrawal could kill you. So again, this is not causing more drug use. It's simply reducing overdose deaths or poisoning deaths, so we can put a system in place to actually help people.
Scott, do you and your staff deal with this often?
We do. Lately, it's happened more often. Charlene herself, just twice in the last couple of months, has rolled up on people that were OD'd. The one, unfortunately, was already time for the sheet over them. But the other one, she ended up happened to hit that person with 2 doses. And that's the other thing that's happening, is that they're, whether it's Narcan or this, what's happening is some of these folks have become more resistant against it. So it's requiring more hits of it. You it's 2, sometimes 3 doses, where 1 used to do it. Mm-hmm. But the sad news is that it's very, very common. And what I find most interesting is that a lot of the folks that are dying from this stuff, they aren't who you think they are. They're kids. They're everyday people. That the other day I was at a concert And there was people behind me that lit up a joint. And you start passing it around at the concert. Now, first off, I don't touch the stuff, but I watched people in the audience just take that. And the person sitting next to me, they go, "Can you believe that someone is taking that and they have no idea who that person is and just gave it to them?"
Yeah.
We don't know where the stuff's coming from.
So to your point about the drug dealers wanting to kill their clients, what they actually are doing is even lacing weed with fentanyl. Why? Because they want to have super pot smokers.
Right.
They want to have super cocaine users. They want to have more frequent. So they've done that actuaries and realized some are going to die, but a lot of those that would just
Overall,
use occasionally are going to use a whole lot more.
Because like any drug, you will use more. I mean, I had no intention of becoming a drug addict. I mean, that wasn't something I planned on.
Yeah.
But with fentanyl, you have to use more.
But when you get there, it just keeps growing and growing and growing until one of two things. You somehow figure out to get the help you need, or they find you off in a corner somewhere.
Yep.
One element I have heard you guys both mention before is dignity, and we've talked about it in previous episodes. Why is it so important to treat all of the people you serve with dignity?
Well, again, first of all, because I want to be treated with dignity, but it's important because it's so encouraging to a person. Because what is a person that's homeless, suffering with addiction, maybe mental health challenges, what are they already assuming is going to happen? That they're not going to be treated like an important person. They already approach help with, I'm not going to be treated like I'm important. And so when a person's at the weakest moment in their life, the most powerful thing we can do is treat them like they're the most important person in the room. And that one act alone becomes transformational.
It's an interesting thing to watch because you will see people come in because they've been treated so poorly somewhere else, and they've already come in with a bit of an attitude. They already assume you're not going to want to help. You're not going to want to talk to them. And again, that's just when we got to set ourselves aside for a minute. And it's not always easy. Look, sometimes I don't come in here in the greatest of moods, and I've had to kind of even re-examine myself at times because I'm a street kid. The street kid wants to put an end to this really quick. And so I've had to really step back sometimes and look at what's going on. But I want to throw something else out there also that people probably aren't aware of. 5 years ago, I had several places I could call because I have people come to us every day that they're sick and tired of being sick and tired. They want to get clean. They're ready to go into a detox, and there's no place to take them. They don't exist like they used to. I used to be able to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, this is Pastor Scott." They knew me when I called, and all I had to do is run this person down, and they would take him in for at least 3-day detox, medically detox them, and put them in a position that we could catch them on the other side.
So when you lack competition, that means we have really horrible results from people. So when you have an organization like Aspire Health Partners, for example, that's the big organization, largest in the Southeast, that gets all the funding and does all the services. They check all the boxes, but you get feedback to when a client goes to detox, they feel like they're checking into 33rd Street Jail in Orange County. In fact, the same trays I'm being told are used at detox that are used at the jail. So it's all about the way that we deliver care. And so I think one of the problems we have, and probably the population that you're talking about that I deal with, is the uninsured. So if I have Aetna, Florida Blue, I'm going to a place that serves steak, has a swimming pool, and maybe horseback riding. So what we've also become very good at, and maybe for another discussion, is helping people get insurance through the marketplace so that when they're ready to roll, they can go to the nicest places that you or I would go to because we have insurance and get the best treatment. And that's why we're having such success at getting people. In fact, the way we're housing our homeless right now is through the mental health and a substance use disorder vehicle because we have no affordable housing units. But if you come right now, I can get you into housing today. And hopefully we've done the groundwork and got you switched over. And we're so blessed to have a donor that's in recovery himself that has a family foundation. So he'll pay that monthly premium for the next 6 months while we're working with you, getting you ready to jump. So that literally Shannon, who's been in recovery since September, can say, bro, the steak is delicious. The buffet is awesome. The spa is great. Why do you want to stay in the woods? Suffer more. I'm tired. and then we can get you to a place that's excellent, a place that you or I would want to go to. I know a person in Central Florida that if I named his name, everyone would know him. And at a weak moment in his life, he ended up getting Baker acted, found himself getting services, and literally had to tell the psychiatrist everything they wanted to hear to get out of there, he said. It was horrific. We've got to provide services, whether it's shelters, access to mental health services, or substance use disorder addiction places that are excellent. And that's where we're going to get the outcomes dramatically changed.
Definitely.
And it really doesn't, look, everything costs money, but it's not as bad as people think if you do it right. It's like anything else. I can always find a cheaper version of a knockoff Yeti. Okay. But if you have a Yeti, it does work better than the knockoff versions, right? And it doesn't cost that much more to manufacture the actual Yeti than it does the knockoff one. My point is, it's true with services also. That next step up isn't that much more money, but the results are exponentially big time different.
Yeah.
I had that argument with my dad growing up. I'll tell my age a little bit, but he'd want to buy shoes at Kmart, and I'd want to get name brand tennis shoes. And my sales pitch to him, which eventually won over, is you're going to buy 5 pairs of shoes, and I'm going to keep this one pair 6 or 7 times longer because it's the value added is there. Quality, and that's what we've got to work on. And unfortunately, because organizations have been around so long and they're so big and there's a lack of competition, there's a problem. So we need to create a lot of opportunities for competition. And I think that's the examples that Matthew's Hope is doing and that United Global Outreach and our partners are working on, is to say, here's a way you can do it VIP, if you will, and spend less money doing it and get way greater outcomes. Results. And therefore we can crack up the cabal that's been created over time in the nonprofit world.
Scott, is there anything else that you want to cover with Tim before we end today?
The truth is we could probably sit here and talk for days. But I just want to encourage people that whether it's our podcast, whether it's watching our websites, following our Facebook pages, those social media, what have you, there is so much information that we feed out into that. And we're not doing it for any other reason than to help educate people. Do we need donors? We need donors. We need donors. That's the bottom line. You can't survive without donors. But I look at every one of our donors as an investor. An investor should expect a return on his investment. And I would tell all of you that are watching this that if you are donating your hard-earned money towards even Matthew's Hope, Tim's organization, whatever, anyone out there, what are you seeing for the return? You're not going to get a financial return, but what you should be able to do is go to their location, talk to their people, understand what's going on, and say, okay, there's my return. These are lives renewed. I know you've been there. I've been there when the light goes back on in the eyes. And it's the greatest, it's the greatest payback you'll ever get, because quite honestly, Tim may feel differently than this, is I'm not paid horribly, mostly because they were concerned what happened if I got hit by a bus and somebody else had to take my job. But
because nobody would want it probably.
But yeah, and that's what but the other side of that is there's no amount of money to make me want to do this work. There just isn't. It really is a deep desire, a calling to sit there and go, I think we can make a difference. And we've managed to surround ourselves with like-minded people that believe they too can be part of the difference. And so when we look at our investors, our donors, I want you to look at it and say, do you feel you're getting a return on your investment? And if you are, then invest heavily if you can. But if you aren't, if it's somebody else and you're just something you've always done, then take a look at that, because I think you should expect that return.
I think it's all about coming and seeing with your own eyes. Because again, a glossy pamphlet, a year-end report, a video at the gala doesn't tell the tale on who's not accessing care, who's outside a system of care. So I've probably given 15,000 tours of bithlo in the 16 years we've been doing this work. And I'll give 15,000 more, because when you come and see what's happening, you're going to see a dynamic operation that's ever changing. I don't know your experience, but sometimes I've gone on a mission trip every summer and felt like I was painting the same
wall
building.
Yeah.
That's not happening in bithlo. That's not happening around the work of United Global Outreach. So the financial statement might be a mess because we're struggling to do way more than we've ever been funded to do, because we're never going to let the resources drive the mission. We're going to let the mission drive the resources. And so therefore we're always short.
That's great advice, guys. Well,
Yeah. I mean, we could, if we were doing it just based on that, we would have closed shop up by the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the truth is, again, when you mentioned that, I'll say it one more time too, is that Matthew's Hope, and much like your nonprofit, it's very hard to describe. There, people say, why do you do a Moving Forward magazine? I say, because we discovered that, quite honestly, we'd go broke making brochures, trying to explain what was going on.
All the things that are going on.
And so it's just better to share those stories through Moving Forward magazine. But taking the tour, we invite people, and I invite people all the time. Come, I want you to call ahead of time so we can make sure we're there to take care of you. But I want you to come in the middle of what we're doing.
Right.
I want you to see, because it's one thing for me to sit there and say, okay, Tim, this is a Yeti cup. Okay. Yeti's getting a lot of Yeti. Think of us. But it's one thing to sit there and say, I do this, and I'll walk you through and say, imagine if you were here. When we bring people in, we actually start them right from the beginning. If you were a guest coming here, here's what your experience is looking like through the day. And when it's all done, 99.9%, there's always that one that has an issue with something you're doing. But 99.9% of the time, that is the clincher. That is when people sit there and go, my God, I had no idea.
And for us, the work is messy. So, we have a school for kids, suffering from trauma and adverse childhood experiences. You may take a tour and the F-bomb might fly. There might be a chair.
Well, I can't say that won't happen here either. Yeah.
I mean, there could be some crazy things happening. But I can also point to Danica, who graduated last year, that 5 years ago, she was the one throwing chairs through the window.
Yeah.
And so we want you to see us at our best and our worst, because we're not operating a museum. It's real people with real problems that need real solutions. And so, things might always not look pristine. In fact, sometimes I say, if we didn't have kids here, I could give fantastic tours about what would happen if we had kids, and the place would always look amazing.
Yeah.
The bathrooms wouldn't be a mess and the trash cans wouldn't be overflowing. But again, we're doing real work that I think if you did come and take a tour, you would see was getting selfishly, I'll say, the greatest ROI in Central Florida.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you guys both for what
I'm going to let him get by with that one.
I've seen the eye.
By the way, this is Matthew's Hope. This is our podcast.
And we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you for coming back, Tim. Again, if you missed Tim's first appearance, we encourage you to go back and watch episode 71. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with your friends, comment, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks.